Hello everyone, welcome back. So we got our dude able to draw out his gun. Now we need to set up our actual aiming so we can get him looking down the iron sights. So, one other thing we need to fix is what happens when you're jumping and you try to draw or so and then it gets kind of messed up. So what we'll do is instead of trying to make it finish it off after you've jumped, we'll just make it to where you can't jump if you're in the middle of this animation. So if you're falling, let's see. So we'll hook this to the false because we're going to get our character movement component and check to see if the character is falling. If they are, don't do anything. If they're not, then they can go ahead and do their drawing weapons mechanism and whatever. And while they're doing that, they won't be able to jump because we're making sure no anim montage is playing. So now if I jump, there we go, that'll fix that. That'll fix you. So now we need to set up our actual aiming function to make our character aim down the sights, strafe, etc., etc. So we're going to add an event that'll be our right mouse button event. And we want to, so let's analyze what we need to do. We need to determine whether or not we have a weapon equipped, how we're facing our player, and then shifting down their movement speed. So pressed, we're going to do a branch to see if they are armed. And if they are, then we will, let's go ahead and set up a function. This will be lock, unlock, rotation. So basically it'll make it to where we strafe, and when we release it we'll be able to tell it to go back. So we'll add an input right here, be locking. Then we'll grab out our character movement component because that's the component we're going to affect. Then we're going to set orient rotation to movement. So this will get the entire actor, and it rotates it based on the direction you're running. When we're strafing, we don't want that to happen, so we're going to do a select node here. And if our character is locking, that means that they are strafing. The right mouse button's held down. So if this is true, then we want it to be false, because we don't want them, if this is locking, we don't want them to orient rotation to movement. It's a little confusing at first, but after I set up the next one, I'll give a screen of it. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set use controller desired rotation. The controller is the mouse input, so it determines the rotation of the camera. When we set this to true, it'll make it to where our character also rotates based on that. This will also go into a select node. And this one is lined up the way it should be. So if it's true, then yes, the mouse will control the direction we're aimed. If this is false, then no, it won't. So we'll double click and add a reroute node here, box select, Q on the keyboard, just to keep everything nice and tidy. Back in the event graph, if we are armed and we press the right mouse button, then we'll grab our lock and unlock rotation and we tell it that we are currently trying to lock. And if we release, then we'll tell it to do that. So to show you what that does, we'll jump in for a second. And pushing the right mouse button does nothing right now, but when I have a gun out, so now he's strafing, huzzah. What we will also need, we're going to do some animation transitions based off this, so we'll add another boolean, be aiming, and when we're doing this, we will set, we'll put it at the end, why not? So we'll set aiming to true, and then we'll take this off and add a branch in place of it. and find out if we're aiming to begin with, because there might be other situations that we don't want this to fire off. We only want this to happen if we are already aiming. So if we are aiming, then we'll set this to unlock, and then we'll set this to false. So we can go into our armed blueprint right here. We're going to keep this section of it, but we can blend based on a bool this section. So we'll blend by bool. This will be our false because we're going to blend based on whether or not we are aimed. We'll copy this because we're going to do different ones based on which weapon we're holding. And it looks like it gets complicated, or it looks like it gets to be a lot, but it's really just a copy, I guess. But still easier in my opinion than having a bunch of different states and trying to manage the transitions to them. So if we are aiming, for instance, let's just pull up our iron sights. Fire, idle rifle iron sights. Alright, so if we're aiming most of these, we're going to use the rifle. It just had, oh, okay. The rifle iron sights. We'll set that as our default. Set it to loop. And I'm going to Control C and Control V it a few times. Oop. Alright, so this one will be rifle, shotgun, sniper, and grenade. And for the pistol, we'll do a different one. So I'll drop this down. And for that one, we're just going to do the standard idle of the pistol. Pistol idle. And we'll set that to loop also. If it doesn't, then at the end it'll just kind of lock in place and it looks funny. Now we need to get that boolean registered, so we'll go into the event graph and we'll find out if our character is aiming. And if they are, then we'll promote that to a variable. Aiming. Add another pin and we can hook that right there. Now back over here, we'll take that aiming value and plug it into our active value. So now we can plug that here. And this handles not only our regular running around, but then our aiming down sights also. So let's jump in. Run around, looks good. Jump looks good. Drawing a weapon, good. And now I'm aiming down the sights. I let go, keeps running around. And it makes him look in the direction. So you can run around and look around, but then, oh no, enemies! Oh, you know. Now let's switch over to a pistol for a second. And try that out. I won't go full screen this time. Yeah. One thing. Let's go back to the rifle and take a look at something to see if it's too snappy between arms at his side. It is very quick. The way you can adjust that transition speed is right here on this blend poses by bool for the aiming. On the true blend time and the false blend time, we'll just set that up to 0.2. So it'll double the time it takes between those. But you can set it to be as long as you need it to be. But that looks a little bit nicer and a little bit more in line with, I think, what a person would look like. Yeah. So the next thing we can do is, once we've done this part, we can actually adjust our camera in so that it gets a little bit closer. So the way to do that is we are going to right click and we're going to add a timeline. Call it cam adjust. And on the top, we're going to hook this to play. And on the bottom, to reverse. Now what this does is it has a little graph inside. Well, let's set this to a length of about 0.5, and then once we add the track, float track, you'll see it has this little graph inside. We'll call that our alpha. And it basically functions like a sequencer play. It just starts from the beginning and then carries the value over to the time frame. So we'll right click and we'll add a key that will set the time to 0 and value 0. Then close to the end, we'll add one that's time is 0.5 and the value is 1. So it works percentage based, so 0 to 1 is basically 0 to 100%. We can box select those, and then pushing this little button right here will push the screen out so that we have all this on screen. Right clicking, we can set an interpolation, which will just, let's go with auto, and you'll see it kind of smooths out that curve between the two of them. Compile that, back over to the event graph. Now we have access to this alpha. Now we can use this to lerp between different vectors or locations, rotations, whatever that you want to use this alpha for, we can use it to lerp. So we'll grab our camera boom, because this is what we're going to affect. I want to change its target length, so basically how far away it is from the character, and the socket offset. So I'm going to set target arm length. This will go into the update because as it's moving along that timeline, it updates out through here. Then we can take this target arm length. We don't want to just set a value, we want to lerp, which is a linear interpolation. We'll take that alpha to be our alpha. A is what we're starting from, B is where we're ending at. Our camera boom is currently 225, so that's our starting point. Now the ending point, you can kind of play around with values and see what you like. I'm going with 125. I figure 100 units in, it zooms the camera in well. And well, let's take a look and see how that looks in game real quick. So pull my weapon out. That's not bad. Let's see. Maybe a little bit closer. I'll just say 100. Play around with the values until you find the one that looks good to you, but for me, I think this will probably be good. That's looking close enough. But now I want it to move up a little bit. And the way we can do that is by affecting our socket offset. Yeah, socket offset. So from the camera boom, we will set socket offset. We'll hook that here. Add a reroute node and hook that like that. And then we can also lerp vectors. So lerp vector, and it's the same concept. Alpha to alpha. A is where we start. Our camera boom is at, our socket offset rather, is at 55. So we'll start at 55. Might stay at 55 on that particular one. This one moves it forward and back. This one moves it left and right. This one moves it up and down. So I'm going to move it also a little up. Maybe 15 units. Kind of just whatever works for you and your character and all that jazz. That looks decent. I'm happy with that. Not terrible. But there is one problem you may have noticed if you tried to look up and down. He do not. But we can fix that pretty easily. So we'll go into the animation blueprint. We'll go into the base states. No, the event graph. We'll kind of push everything along to make it look a little nicer. Clean it up. Because we're going to need to add another pin. So from our player reference, we will get our control rotation. Now if you remember, this is the mouse input. So whichever rotation we got here, that's basically the direction our mouse is looking. So we can split this by right-clicking, and it'll break it down into its X, Y, and Z values. Now from the pitch is your up and down. Roll is left and right, and yaw is like the circle. Well, it's also like left and right, but in a circular, and it's hard to explain. But pitch is the one we're after. So we want to need a subtract. We'll take this to the bottom because we want to subtract 360 from this value. We'll take this. We also want a multiply. We're going to times by -1, and I'll explain this more at the end. And then we want a less than value. The less than is 180. So basically we are checking the control rotation and seeing if the pitch is greater than 180, then we're going to take the pitch and subtract 360, or subtract it from 360 to get however much it actually is right now. If it's not less than 180, is it less than or greater than? I may have gotten the wrong one. I'm gonna just set it up real quick. This might need to change. Alright, so after this we're gonna do a select float, and this goes to the A, and this goes to the B. I always get some things confused in the midst of it. Alright, so we're going to divide this by 3 because we're going to take it and distribute it over 3 values, over 3 bones, so this will smooth that out. Then we're going to need a new variable called aim rotation. This is a rotator. And here at the end we're going to set it. We want to make a rotator, and this is going to go in the roll. I'm not sure why. I don't know why we would go from pitch to roll, but it do. We'll set that here. Just kind of adjust that. Box selected all and move it down. Compile that. Now we need to tell it where we want to use these. You might think, well, right here where we're aiming, that'd be a good place to use it. But because of the way we have set up with our anim montages, if we do that, every time we fire when the anim montage plays, it'll snap back to its start. So we need to go back out to our anim graph. And it is going to go right in between here. What we're going to do is we're going to right click and get a transform modify bone. This will let us update the rotation or location and scale if you wanted to of bones in real time. We're only going after that rotation one. So highlighting it, we'll go to translation, expose this pin. Right now it's checked. No, we don't need it. Rotation, keep that one exposed as pin, but the rotation mode will be add to existing. Scale, don't need it. Alpha, don't need it. Now we can set which bone we want it to modify up here at the top under skeletal control, bone to modify. This one is going to be the spine. I'll hook this to the component. And then we'll copy that and paste it. And ba-boom, ba-boom. And then ba-boom. So this rotation right here will be our aim rotation. So now let's check and see if that's working. Nope, I flubbed something. So this must be greater than 180. Getting the control rotation. Should be updating. Let's take this down to here for a second. Control C, I'm going to take it into the armed state. Yeah, we'll put it right here for now. Make a lot of room. It should be working. Okay, so that is working. Just something with that graph at the front. Which is peculiar. Oh, they're all on spine 1. Ugh, so update it to spine 2 and spine 3. And that should no. Odd. Alright, well then we'll set this here for now. And then we'll just hook this one up to make it work for now, and then we'll fix it when we get to the firing. But that'll work for now. But we do need to make sure that this one is spine 2 and spine 3. So now we can at least aim up and down. I'm not sure why that's not doing like it did last time. But we zoom in. Looks decent. We can look up and down. Can still jump. And we'll set it up when we get to the firing. We'll figure out why it wasn't working over there. But also, if you want a more detailed explanation of that, I'm actually using Vertice's system for the control rotation from his FPS series from like 7 years ago. We're just adapting it a little bit differently. Very little different. It still works pretty much the way he had, just putting it in a different place. So yeah, there's how you can have your character running around and aiming his weapon now. If you wanted, you can also make it to where he slows down to a walk when he's aiming. And what we'll do is we'll just add a function over here that's called adjust walk speed. Its input will be a float. And then from that we'll get our character movement. We will set the walk speed to that new value. And then wherever we want to update it, we can just call that. So I'll just drag out the adjust walk speed, drop it right here. And then when we're aiming, I'll set it to like 225 because I think our max is like 450. Yeah. So drag out one more. And then punch in 450. And now in case you want more tense combat, or you want maybe like a horror game, you can be like, oh, okay, what's going on around this corner? You know, things like that. So yeah. Alright, in the next one we'll start setting up the firing system, getting the ammo counts and all that jazz. So I'll see y'all soon. Bye.